want to buy my bike, Francis?
What would I do with that? Oh, really? I can have any bike in the world.
Ha! You don't want it anymore because you already have it. Tell me where it is before I lose patience with you, Francis.
Help! Help! Help, Dad! Dad, give me!
Go ahead and scream your head off. We're miles from where anyone can hear you.
So I started the wrong meeting by mistake, and that's why no one was showing up. So how is everyone today? We shocked and devastated about Pee-Wee Herman's death.
Out of all deaths lately, that was probably one of the most shocking ones that I've heard. It's just all these people passing away, and then you hear Pee-Wee Herman died. It's like, what?
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. Like, all at the same time.
Well, I think we're just more aware of more people.
Yeah,
right?
It's true.
Statistically, like some of them are going to die sometimes.
Well, Pee-wee was 70. He wasn't statistically, of the age to be dying. So,
Well, he died. It was the same day or maybe the day before the guy from Euphoria who was 25. So it was an even more statistically unlikely death.
Yeah, you would not expect something like that. That's crazy. Sorry?
What was the cause of death?
He had cancer. I don't know what kind of cancer, but
Cancer is cancer. It sucks either way.
yeah. Let's get this show started because this is a special show. This is a this is a tribute to Pee-wee Herman, who Dan and I were big on Pee-wee Herman. Surprisingly, I don't know a lot of people who are like super into the whole Pee-wee Herman genre, whether it predates the Playhouse or postdates the Playhouse. I don't really know a lot of people. Just kind of me and you, Dan.
Well, the first time I watched anything with Pee-wee Herman was he did the Pee-wee Herman show on HBO back in, I think it was like 86, maybe?
I know, that was 81. The Pee-wee Herman show on HBO, yeah.
I was just watching it on YouTube, as a matter of fact, just to
kind of prepare.
And I'll tell you something. I was watching it, I was just like, wow, I remembered how ridiculous it was, but at the same time, it was hysterical.
Yeah, it's so I want to, but before we actually start getting into the whole nitty gritty, I do want to introduce the people on the show here so the people listening aren't confused. So we have, as you may have guessed, Dan Seymour is my brother. We made a lot of Saturday mornings. Wait, let me restructure that sentence a little bit. We spent a lot of Saturday mornings watching Pee-wee's Playhouse. We watched Pee-wee's Big Adventure. We watched the Pee-wee Herman HBO special. And when I was a kid, I didn't realize that, some of it was more inappropriate than others. I just all thought it was one big jarbled mess of Pee-wee Herman. Getting older, it's it definitely, it is very clear that some of it is less appropriate for children than others. So that's Dan Seymour. How are you, Dan?
Hello, I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
And Robert Levene, who I can't see, but he's still here. It's Robert Levene. Robert Levene, I think, and forgive me if I'm getting a little personal here, but I think you're a little older than Dan and I.
Yes.
If you don't, do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I am 49.
Okay.
I don't need to know what you look like. I just need to know how old you are.
So you're not that much older than we are, but you're Dan, you're what, 44?
That's right.
And I just turned 40. So yeah, I guess we're within 9 years of each other. It's not the most unreasonable thing to expect someone of our age group to all have watched Pee-wee. So anyway, that's the introductions. And now, because I used to do movie reviews on MSV, I used to do them. They were just very specific and very drawn out, very long, and dare I say it, very boring. So I'm going to make this one less boring. And I'm just going to say we're talking about Pee-wee's Big Adventure. It is a classic 1985 movie when Paul Reubens was flying off of the success of the 1981 Pee-Wee Herman special on HBO. I'm just going to go around the board and talk about people's overviews, and I'll ask questions about your opinions on stuff, and we could go from there. So, Dan, your overview, if I may ask, of Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah, this movie really meant a lot to me as a kid. I think you were alluding to this. It meant a lot to both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you were also alluding to the surprise that I felt upon learning that that wasn't a universal truth, that not everyone from our generation felt as sentimental about this movie as we did.
Yeah.
I see it as like a quintessential American movie, a great comedy, and it kind of touches on all the things that are important about being a human. And I guess about being the kid, I mean, being a kid, one of the beauties of the movie is like the ambiguity about whether he's a kid or an adult or both. And I think, you know, as we mature from kids into adults, we all go through that confusion too. So that, you know, I think the movie touches on all that stuff in a way that's really funny, but also touching and great.
Okay. Rob Levene, I want to ask you a question before we get into your overview of this movie.
Sure.
Did you see it in the theater?
Yes, I did.
You did. So you were excited about Pee-wee's Big Adventure in the theater.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I was only 2 when it was in the theater. So yeah, that didn't work out for me. But what's your overview of this movie?
My overview is Pee-wee Herman was an adult that didn't want to grow up. He acted like an adult in some ways, but was more of a child stuck in a grown man's body.
Okay. And that's yeah, I'm sorry.
He was the epitome of someone who doesn't want to grow up and just wanted to, you know, be a child the rest of his life, even though he was a grown up.
Right.
Well, Rob, can I ask you, because it occurred to me, I watched this movie the other night to do research for this podcast, and there's another character who's also a man-child, if you will, who's Francis, and that kind of made me wonder whether they are actually children in adult bodies, or right. So is Francis also an adult who doesn't want to grow up, because he's like living with his father, kind of living the life of a child,
Yeah.
right?
Francis, I think in a way, Francis was also. He was more the bully child, still living with his parents, where Pee-wee lived on his own, but was still had a lot of childlike qualities.
Right. Where I think that what you may be trying to say is that, you know, where like Pee-wee and Francis are both like a man child, but whereas Pee-wee is childlike, Francis is childish.
Yes.
Right. So that's the distinction. And now you guys are asking the question, like, it's left a little bit ambiguous as to whether Pee-wee is an adult or a child in an adult's body. I think a couple of scenes in the movie would suggest that he is in fact an adult. One such scene is where he dressed as a woman and acted like what's his name, Mickey's wife, so that they could escape the police.
Yes.
And you know, in fact, if he was a child, that wouldn't have worked. And the scene immediately after that, Pee-wee took over the driving. Granted, he did drive off of a cliff, but he was still driving, and he wasn't like, oh, I don't know how to drive. He was just sort of like, yeah, I'll take over. Why not?
Only an adult could drive a car.
Only an adult.
Yeah.
Well, I feel as though, especially an escaped convict, would not allow a child to drive his car. I don't know why I would say.
Who could be that irresponsible?
Yeah, like
only a criminal can be that irresponsible.
Right, exactly, a criminal. So maybe we haven't actually answered the question. Perhaps this will never actually be answered. But are you familiar with the history of like how Pee-wee became Pee-wee?
No, that I am not.
So yeah, Dan, I think I told you this story, but I don't know if you remember it. So I don't fully remember it all that clearly myself, but I think the story is he was in an improv group and he was working on a few characters, and one of them obviously was Pee-wee, and he said that the idea of Pee-wee is that he's a lounge act that people don't want to be watching, but he thinks he's like the best lounge act there is, or like an MC or something like that. And I said, you know what? Now it makes sense. This character makes sense now. I might be remembering the details a little bit differently. So, I don't want to get angry emails or, death threats or anything like that. That's not how Pee-wee came to be. But I want to talk about my overview of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, because I got into it when I was a child. I don't remember if it was Pee-wee's Playhouse first and then I saw Pee-wee's Big Adventure, or the other way around. I was very young when all of that stuff started coming to the surface. I remember our father, he said that his favorite show was Pee-wee's Playhouse. And, in preparation for this podcast, I actually did watch a few episodes of Pee-wee's Playhouse too. I could see how it would be someone's favorite show. That show it's just, when you're a kid, you're just like, oh, he's making funny noises. He's going, like he's doing the funny stuff. But just all the ideas that you have to cram into like a 15, 20-minute episode. And he did. And it was really good. And, it wasn't just the ideas. It was the humor that he was able to put into those episodes. That was just incredible. And also the sound effects. I like the sound effects. So, I didn't understand a lot of why Pee-wee's Big Adventure was as clever, creative, and humorous as it was until I got older. Again, it was just the whole like, hey, he's Pee-wee. He left the playhouse. There's no secret word in this movie. So, we'll just take it as it is. I didn't realize that it predated Pee-wee's Playhouse. Technically, it didn't, because there was the Pee-wee Herman special, which took place in the playhouse, but there was also no secret word. There's a lot of build on this character. A lot of stuff that even I never knew existed until recently. But the movie, I believe that was Tim Burton's directorial debut, if I'm not mistaken. And a damn good job, a damn fine job he did. You remember Large Marge?
Oh boy.
I want to talk about Large Marge for a second here. Our grandmother, our father's mother, she did not approve of the Large Marge scene. Everything else was totally fine in that movie, but the scene where her face became that crazy claymation thing, she was just sort of like, that's terrible. Children shouldn't be watching this. Everything else was fine.
Hard to argue.
Yeah. Well, we did though.
But as a child, you see that as funny as a child. As an adult, adults' views are different on those type of things. But as a child, you find it funny because it's supposed to be an animation. It's supposed to be funny.
Right.
So kids watch it and they think it's funny. Where some adults will turn around and be like, "Well, it was just stupid."
Well, that might be where the age difference actually comes into play, because I was terrified of that as a kid.
Were you?
That's funny. It just gets funnier and funnier with age.
I don't remember being terrified of that as a child. I mean, I might have been, but it was such a long time ago, and I wasn't forming memories yet. I just remember the movie as a whole, and I never realized how dangerous it was that Pee-wee kind of fell asleep on the side of the highway when he was trying to get to Texas. That was Pee-wee did some stuff, man. Pee-wee did some stuff that a lot of people probably wouldn't do. Like,
well, times were different then.
Well, yeah, like go across the country to get his bike back.
Break into a wealthy person's house and attack his son. Yeah.
It actually hitchhiked back then, and really, nobody thought anything about it. Now you try to do it, and you got to worry about getting in the car and being killed.
True.
Well, he ended up in an escaped convict's car. I mean, that's a good illustration of why not to hitchhike, right?
And dressed up as a woman.
And he dressed up as a woman for the escaped convict. who committed the most heinous crime that there is, cutting the "Do Not Remove" tag off of his mattress. He was armed and dangerous. He escaped from prison, and they blocked off the highway to stop him and ask, "Have you seen this guy?" Because, maybe that's a commentary on how the legal system works. They focus on things that aren't actually important, and then they disregard things that are important.
If you believe the story.
If you think on that scene, though, if you watch Jimmy Smith's face when he was dressed up as a girl, he was kind of looking at him all creepy and everything. If you think about it now as an adult, it was kind of a creepy kind of thing back then.
Yeah.
But again, you didn't think about it that way. But as an adult, you look back and go, wow, he really was just like, it was all creepy and everything.
Yeah. I did very much enjoy the face that he made, because he was sort of like, hey, you know what? He doesn't look half bad. Even though he was, what was it? Just like a long wool white sweater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the cop is all into it too.
Yeah, so I want to get a quick look at that cute little outfit you got on.
So was that a stolen car? That's my question. Obviously, right?
I mean, it had to have been. Maybe it was a rental.
I mean, just this bad police work. Like,
yeah,
it's a stolen car at a checkpoint, and they let him go.
What was crazy is he hid the handcuffs so well when he put his hands down underneath the bottom of the steering wheel. He was really trying to hide those handcuffs when they stopped him at that checkpoint. And then the cop made Pee-Wee get out of the car and spin around so he could see that outfit. I'm sorry, he did. Again, very creepy.
Man, would you mind stepping out of the car? Not at all. So today I found a 1981 Paul Reubens interview. I posted it on Facebook if anyone actually wants to take a look at it. You could also find it on YouTube. It was only posted 5 days ago, so it might have surfaced like as a result of Paul Reubens' death. But it was Paul Reubens in 1981 having done the Pee-Wee Herman special on HBO and talking about it as Paul Reubens, not as Pee-Wee. And it's just so awkward and weird to see, especially him being that young, just being normal, talking like a regular guy. I don't know, just figured I would mention that. When he speaks in interviews as Paul Reubens and not as Pee-Wee Herman, he's very calm and he's kind of actually quiet. And it's really something. By the way, we can veer from the movie. The movie is just a catalyst for the conversation. We could talk about anything Pee-wee related.
There was a movie back in the early 80s called Midnight Madness that he did.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. He was in the movie for a hot 5 or 10 minutes. He played an arcade attendant.
Mm-hmm.
But he still had the Pee-wee-esque look to him. Even though he was in like a cowboy type costume, handing out quarters to kids, you could still see that he was trying not to be Pee-wee Herman, but that was the character that he had become. And every movie after Pee-wee's Big Adventure, you could always tell that he was trying not to be Pee-wee Herman, but at the same time he was.
Yeah.
I remember him doing a few cameos. He was in Meatballs 3 also.
Okay.
Counselor.
He was in, what was it, an episode of was it Mork and Mindy? I think and he was some sort of like student whatever, and I was like, oh, maybe he'll be different. He sounded and pretty much looked just like Pee-wee. So I'm like, I thought you'd do other stuff, because I happen to know he was on an episode of 30 Rock. Are you guys familiar with that episode?
No.
No.
So he was on an episode of 30 Rock, he played like this quadriplegic, like German something, like, high figure, and he did this voice that sounded nothing like Pee-wee. So I said, clearly he's capable of doing that. So why is he only doing the Pee-wee voice? I don't get it.
Well, he does it in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the movie within the movie. He has a different voice, right?
What,
As
Mr. Herman?
Yeah. I don't know. Well, he was in Blow, right? He had like a legitimate
Yeah.
supporting role in Blow as a cocaine dealer.
I mean, and he was also the Penguin's father
Yes,
in
yes, he was.
Batman. And
But it was still you can see the difference. So they didn't give him a speaking part. It was just more of a
right.
father, and you looked at him and you could tell right away who it was.
It's Pee-wee.
He,
Yes.
he did cameos
Mhm.
over the years, but then he dropped out of after the whole movie theater or
Yeah.
it became one big joke, and then he
Mm.
dropped out the limelight for a while, then he came back, and then he would drop off, and then you don't hear anything about him for a while, and then next thing you know, he hear on the news that he passed away.
Mm. I heard. So I said this on Facebook, but I'm gonna speak to a much larger audience of like 12 people right now. They're saying that, Dan, you were almost the first person to tell me about Pee-wee dying. You texted me, you said, did you hear the Pee-wee news? And I said, there's Pee-wee news. And there was no follow-up to it. And immediately after that, Alan, my friend Alan, texted me. He goes, Johnny, you sitting down? And I'm like, oh boy, what's this? And then he sent me the article that Pee-wee had passed away. I was sitting down. I was sitting down to dinner at this. It was an Italian restaurant in Paris.
The City of Eternal Love?
The City of Eternal Love, the Italian restaurant in Paris. Alan says, read this. There were Australian people sitting across from me and Lara. And, it was just this whole big thing. It was Italian, it was French, it was Australian, and then Pee-wee died. And then, like, everyone was telling me about it. Greg was immediately after. So I'm like, oh, this must have just been published news. It must have just been like, suddenly everyone knows, and that's why everyone is telling me at the same time.
I opened up Facebook that morning, and the first thing that was on my Facebook my newsreel was R.I.P. Pee-wee Herman.
Hmm.
I was like, huh? I immediately went to Google, and yeah, I was like, wow. So, and then everything on Facebook was Pee-wee Herman passing away, and all the news and everything, and it was just like, it was one of those. It was just like, wow. Then you start thinking back about his life, and and it's just becomes surreal. You start thinking about your own mortality when somebody passes away,
especially your like childhood hero.
Yes.
It's like, oh man, this guy was like young when he was on the TV, and then you would see interviews and stuff with him, and like he's aging and aging and aging, and then all of a sudden he's gone. But Pee-wee's Big Adventure, one of the big themes was Paris. Movie starts in Paris, the Tour de France, and he's got the Eiffel Tower thing going on. He meets Simone, whose dream is to go to Paris. And I was in Paris when I found out that Pee-wee died. So I said, that's a crazy, crazy thing, and I'm not sure if it's a coincidence.
You never know.
Do you think that Simone's real name was Simone, or do you think she said her name was Simone because she was a wannabe French woman? She's living in Texas, right? Like, what is she doing with the name Simone?
But that was California. The dinosaur thing That's in California. I don't know if it's
Oh,
supposed
it's
to be.
California. Okay.
Well, I don't know if it's supposed to be California in the movie, but
That place does exist in California.
yeah,
That
it
place
does.
does.
Andy just seemed more like a Texan than a Californian. Maybe that's a stereotype. I don't know.
I think that we're thinking of Texas because he had just come from the Alamo,
Hmm.
and that's in
Oh,
Texas.
That's true. The Alamo actually put out a nice statement after he died, saying that every day someone comes to the Alamo, asking about
Where's
the
the
basement.
basement?
yeah.
Nice. So let's wrap back around to Pee-wee's Big Adventure because I wanna get your opinions on certain things because I guess that's why we're here to talk about Pee-wee's Big Adventure, right? Yeah,
Why
might
are
as
we
well
here? Yeah.
grab a drink, talk about
Yeah.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure. What you got there? White wine?
This is whiskey distilled in Jersey City at the Corgi
Oh
Distillery
yes,
in Jersey City.
you tell me that. Okay, so does it and if it's too hard, you can tell me. I don't take it personally. We'll start with Rob. Rob, what was your favorite part, scene, whatever, in Pee-wee's Big Adventure?
One of my favorites was the whole adventure of him getting the bike back at Universal Studios.
Yes.
The whole bike chase scene, the whole him walking up on the set, stealing the bike, and taking off with the bike.
Hmm.
Um, just it was such a Hollywood thing to do. You start off on one part, and then he just starts making this adventure through the entire studio,
Hmm.
running into different people, and leading up to him going to the pet store and reluctantly saving the snakes out of there.
Yes.
Um, it just goes to show you that anything's possible in Hollywood, even for somebody just stealing a bike from a commercial.
Yeah. What was that they were filming? No, I try to figure that out. It's like you sold a lot of magazine subscriptions for this bike, but I want to give Mother Superior. Like what were they filming?
Maybe a Christmas movie. That's my guess.
It seemed like it was something, I don't know, yeah, like something Christmas type thing,
Yeah.
where, he won the bike, but no, I want to give Mother Superior. He says, I want to give Mother Superior. I want to give. And
But I
then
want to give.
he walks into the scene, takes the bike, is out of there, and then the whole chase
Yeah.
begins.
I love that because he's like, "Oh, you've inspired a lot of people." I'll say I'm going to start a paper route right now. And one of my favorite parts about it is that it was Miss Yvonne and Wayne Arnold.
Yes.
Miss Yvonne and Wayne Arnold. So, Dan, can you talk about your favorite, or was that your favorite?
My favorite is the 30 seconds or so between when he locks the bathroom door where Francis is taking his bath and when they open the door, because that's like he worked so hard to get in that room, and for those 30 seconds he was able to have his way with Francis, and I love it.
It's funny because I was actually going to say, I wasn't going to talk about that exact thing that you just said, but possibly my favorite quote in the movie was in that scene where he said, "Go ahead and scream your head off. We're miles from where anyone can hear you."
That is my favorite line in the movie. Yeah. I mean, who had the expression is, "I wish I could have 5 minutes alone." Well, he didn't get 5 minutes. He got 30 seconds. But like,
Yeah.
it required deception and use of novel tools and everything and daring. But he finally got it. And I mean, who hasn't wished that they could get those 30 seconds with the school bully or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. In the swimming pool. Well, so I will say though that I don't think that Francis was necessarily a bully because when Pee-wee came into the room, Francis got scared. He was like trying to get away from him. So clearly Francis was not like, a relentless bully who would just beat on Pee-wee. He just used his money to get what he wanted. And
Yeah, bully's the wrong word. The
Right.
spoiled rich kid
Right.
or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Um, so I love though. So in the beginning of the movie, when he gets he's like slides down the pole. First of all, he's in his pajamas and he slides down the pole. He's in his suit. You know, how does that happen? Defies physics. And he lights a candle to start the breakfast machine. And I never realized this before, but it's like that seems dangerous to like light something on fire in the kitchen. I don't know. That's just me though. And then it goes
And the toast does burn, right?
yeah, and it goes through this whole song and dance where like the Abraham Lincoln guy is like flipping the pancakes onto the ceiling. So it's like clearly this machine needs some work. As cool as it is, you know, you got pancakes on the ceiling, you got burnt toast, you got I think that's probably the only problems, right? Like and you know, the fact that he didn't use scissors, he lit a candle to burn that rope instead of just cutting it. And an anvil drops down onto the counter that starts the whole thing. But I like that after all that song and dance, and he's got his pancakes and his bacon and his sunny side up eggs and the strawberry, he pours Mr. T cereal over it.
Yes.
After having a discussion with his pancakes. Can I have some Mr. T cereal? Okay. So he pours it on, and he takes one bite with a giant fork after buttering his toast, mind you. Takes one bite and then leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny.
I think
yeah.
one of my other favorite scenes in that movie by far is him in the biker bar, putting on the shoes, jumping up on the bar, and dancing to tequila.
I feel like I'm not unique in what my favorite parts of this movie are, because it seems to be like everyone's echoing my thoughts. Where like, okay, we're miles from where everyone can hear you. That's funny. And then he goes to this biker bar. He destroys everyone's motorcycle. And, you know, they're about to kill him and tattoo him and all that stuff. You know, Elvira says, let me handle him first, and et cetera, et cetera. He goes, let me have a last request. Okay, why not? Gets the shoes from the bartender and dances to tequila on the counter. And about halfway through, he starts breaking their pitchers, and that's what, like, you know, gains their respect. And I have been wondering for a little while now, did he have that last request because that's the last thing he wanted to do before he died? Or did he think that that was going to gain their respect?
I think that was his last hope to stay alive.
Yeah. I think at that point he was grasping at straws just to save his own skin.
Yeah.
And then when it all worked out in the long run, he was probably sitting back going, wow, that actually worked. Okay.
And then like what, 30 seconds later, he drives a motorcycle into that wooden sign and ends up in the hospital anyway.
And then has nightmares about his bike being chewed up and taken away from him again.
So I want to speak to the dream sequences, because there were like 2, 3 of them. Like there were at least 2, and I thought that the dream sequences were really well done. I really enjoyed those dream sequences because it has the music and it has like, this is the kind of thing that a child has nightmares about. His bike is on his mind. You know, Francis is the devil. You know, Francis is basically dictating when the flame should shoot out of the fire pot onto the bike. He's like, no, like, dude, very well done. I liked it. You know, the first one too, the claymation dinosaur that destroyed his bicycle, you know, which seemed to mirror that the dinosaur that he was in was the last thing that he was in before he was chased by Andy. You know, so
kind of like a foreshadowing of what's going to happen?
I think the dinosaur happened after the Andy thing.
The dream. Yeah.
Right. The dinosaur dream
yeah, it
happened
did.
after
did.
he left the dinosaur because he woke up in the train, which he jumped onto to get away from Andy. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking something hobo. Yeah.
Let's go over one last thing. And we'll decide how to talk about this in a moment because I had nothing prepared. We're just kind of talking about Pee-wee.
I think it's going really well.
I think it's going great.
Yeah.
I think this is a fabulous conversation. So, okay. The sequence of events in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. That I wonder, was he like, okay, what seems feasible? Or was he just sort of like, one thing's going to lead to another, going to lead to another, going to lead to another. So he goes to the psychic, who is clearly a fraud because she's looking through his wallet. And then she goes, it's in the Alamo in the basement. Now, people have had this issue where it's like, this is where her psychic office is. She is always looking at Al and Moe's bargain basement prices. Why does it seem as though this is the first time she's having this idea? You know,
or
like,
does she say that to every person who comes looking for a fortune? That's what she tells them.
right? It's like, oh, yours is in the Alamo too.
Although I guess the tour guide at the Alamo would be accustomed to people asking about it, right? Because he wouldn't have been the first one.
Well, that's true. That's true too. Although maybe it's like, oh, like where am I gonna find, my love, or where am I gonna, whatever. It might not require actually going to the basement. Maybe the basement was just an added thought. Bargain basement prices. It's just fun to watch though, that like she took his wallet and like started flipping through the pictures. I would say this, if that happened to me, they would not get any information by looking in my wallet. So like she was kind of taking a chance there, I would say.
Yeah.
It's like you open my wallet, you get my driver's license. It's like, oh, I see a car. Like, yeah, I drive a car.
Well, times were different then. In the pre-phone era, you probably would have a picture of what was important to you in your wallet.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. I'm also just realizing it now. It's funny that Pee-wee has like 6 pictures of him and his bike in his wallet.
Some people have pictures of women. Some guys have pictures of motorcycles. He had pictures of his bicycle.
Yeah.
His most prized possession is that bike.
Yes. Okay. So, what was that guy's name? The guy who lifted the bicycle? Fork over the money for lifting it for you, Buxton. It's like something Seymour.
I'll tell you
right?
the actor's name.
Yeah.
The actor's name was Ralph Seymour.
Ralph Seymour. That was it. Yeah. That's why it was so great of a thing, because his name was Ralph Seymour. Maybe I can lift a bicycle too. Ralph Seymour. So anyway, I got really hung up on the psychic thing. So he goes out, hitches a ride with Mickey, which we talked about. And then there's the squiggly road scene. Dan, do you remember when I was obsessed with the squiggly roads? Sort of.
I don't know, not necessarily.
You don't. I was kind of. I wanted like a pad, just like a stupid like notepad, so I could draw squiggly roads. And you made fun of me for it. You're like, hey, you could draw squiggly roads.
That was my job at the time.
Dan is older than I am. For those of you who are not familiar with the brother dynamic, and that is why he made fun of me for doing squiggly roads. Yeah. Yeah, so he hitched a ride. There were the squiggly roads, drove off, found himself in the middle of nowhere, hitched a ride with Large Marge, who we also talked about. Large Marge dropped him off at the diner, he discovered that he took a ride with her ghost, and then he left. My wallet's gone because the psychic had his wallet. I think you've scrubbed off that tuna melt. Watch the sunrise with me in the dinosaur's mouth, right? Andy comes along. Andy chases him onto the train. Train drops him off at the Alamo. There's no basement at the Alamo. There's the kid who took the picture of Pee-Wee. Because he was like, I'm going to show my friends this guy. So he leaves. What happened after that? After he left the Alamo? I forget.
Eventually, he made his way to a rodeo where he tried to ride a bull.
Right.
And
So,
Yeah, he
was,
needs to make a phone call. He wanted to use the phone.
the phone call was after the rodeo. I remember this because he made his way to the rodeo and to escape Andy, who found him there. Like, they just happened to both be there at the same time.
Right.
He dressed as a cowboy.
Because
Sorry?
he saw he was wearing the red shirt.
Right.
So the bull started chasing him outside the arena.
Mhm.
Pee-wee woke up after flying off the bull,
At the bull, yeah.
and they asked him if he remembers anything, and he said, I remember the Alamo, and then
And they
everybody
all cheer. So the reason that I remember this, now he says, I remember the Alamo. They all cheer. And it seems like maybe there was something they cut out in between these two scenes, because it went right from there to him going to that biker bar, like walking into the biker bar. So, he goes in, excuse me, I'm trying to use the phone. They force him out, knocks the bikes over. They bring him back in. He does tequila to stop them from killing him. Drives the motorcycle into the wooden sign. I'm doing this all from memory. I'm sorry.
Then he sees on the
hospital.
TV.
He's on the news
Yeah.
that the bike is there. He goes, he finds Hollywood Studios. He gets in by pretending to be one of Milton Berle's associates.
Yeah.
And saying, a duck. And he like pinches the guy's cheek. So he gets in. John Paragon is dressed as a one of those robot cadet people. John Paragon, by the way, is the face and voice of Jambi on Pee-wee's Playhouse. Not the body, though. You don't see his body. Okay, yeah. Finds his bike, rides through the thing. They give him a deal. When does the pet shop thing happen?
After he leaves the studio, he flew over the fence. He skids on the bike and he says,
Yes.
I meant to do that. Then all of a sudden he sees the pet store on fire.
Mm-hmm.
He runs in, starts scooting out all the dogs and all the other animals, passing the snakes 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Then he grabs the snakes. He faints. The fireman says this boy is a hero. One of the guards from the studio says this boy is under arrest.
Yeah.
Then
And then they kind of jump cut to
the
the
drive-in
movie
theater
scene. Yeah.
now a hero, and they made this movie about him.
And he meets up with all the people that he encountered through the movie, who are all at the same exact showing in the same exact drive-through, and gives them candy. What's her name? Dottie. Dottie's
Yeah.
there, wearing like a really puffy dress. And Speck is in the little basket. So, and he tries to give Mickey, because I guess they caught him after all, he tries to give him a file in a foot-long hot dog, but the guard was 1 foot long, but the guard was too smart for that. Said, hold it. Which was funny that he just kind of like, he's like, I'll take that file. Here you go. And let Pee-wee go on his way.
But Mickey respects the effort, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice try.
Now it's on the bus with the rest of the convicts on the bus.
Yeah.
It's cool that they let the comics see the movie.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I guess then one of my other favorite parts is when Francis sits on the bike and he pushes the button and projects him all the way up in the air, which in reality probably would have killed him, but I guess, that's why it's a movie.
Or
Yeah.
maybe he does die.
Maybe. Yeah, they don't actually say what happens to him.
You just see him flying away, and then him and Dottie ride off into the sunset on their bikes.
Through the movie screen. And, and movie. Thanks for a wonderful time at the movies. Don't miss the next Pee-wee movie that takes place on a farm.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Big
So I kind of did that a little out of order. I was probably supposed to do that at the beginning of the movie, but I just wanted to make sure we hit all the points. So I'll go around one more time and I'll say, Dan, do you have any, like, whether it's Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Big Top Pee-wee, Pee-wee Herman Show, Pee-wee's Playhouse, Pee-wee's Saturday Night Live, whatever, do you have any favorite Pee-wee moments, broad range?
I think that the first scene between him and Francis after he first gets his bike and Francis tells him he wants his bike for his birthday, that's just one of those scenes where like they could have settled for like kind of funny, and they're like, no, that's good, that's not good enough. We're going for like completely hilarious, and they went above and beyond. It's just a brilliant comedic scene.
I love that scene because when he says, "I want your bike," Pee-wee like laughs hysterically and falls onto the ground. What's so funny, Pee-wee? It's not for sale, Francis. That's my best Pee-wee effort.
When he says, guess what I want for my birthday? He says, a new brain.
New brain. No, and then he goes, I wouldn't sell my bike for all the money in the world, not for $1 million, billion, trillion dollars. And then that's when they started going into, then you're crazy. I know you are, but what am I? And it's just like, damn, man.
Well, it is interesting how like money could not recreate this bike. Like we don't know where it came from or who made it or whatever, but like no amount of money in the world could create a replica of this bike. That's the only one that has ever existed and will ever exist. It's like, another thing about when you become an adult and that kind of wonder of things fades, right?
Yeah, true.
Like an adult sees that, well, why don't they just make another bike exactly like
the bike,
it?
yeah. Well, yeah, I guess like you said, like where'd they get it? He like opens the thing in his backyard and like the thing lifts up and he's like, hey, good morning, I'm here. What I like about that is that up until his bike gets stolen, that seems to be like his routine. This is what he does. He just like goes and he like punches in a secret code and he pushes the tree branch and it opens up the thing and he's like, good morning, I'm here. Does he say that every morning? Good morning, I'm here.
Yeah.
So,
It's just a small snippet of his everyday routine. You just see you don't see him doing it every day. You see him in that one spot getting his bike, and then all the chaos ensues afterwards of his bike being stolen and him trying to get it back.
All right.
Well, the other things that he does are also routine, right? Like the guy at Mario at the magic shop, he's used to him coming in regularly. The bike shop is used to him coming in regularly. So yes, he's a man of routine.
I wanted to, before I forget, and I often lament forgetting to say things on these shows. I wanted to say Pee-wee had that knocker that he put on the Buxton's door. They had that whole scene where they were like, oh, here's a prank this and a prank this and a prank this. Why was that not one of the prank things that he bought? He just, like, I feel like that would have been a much better setup.
It's an
oversight.
It just came out of nowhere.
It just came out of nowhere. So, Rob, I haven't forgotten about you. Do you have a favorite Pee-wee moment?
I think a couple of the funniest moments. One was after the whole thing in the movie theater. He was on one of the award shows, and the first thing that he said was, "Have you heard any good jokes lately?"
Yes, that's good. That was a good one.
Prior to that, Howard Stern did a whole thing on his show. It was on TV. It was called Pee-wee's Play with Himself House, and Howard Stern was dressed up like Pee-wee Herman.
Oh.
it would, if you can find, I haven't been able to find it, but if you can find it, watch it, because he just goes through this whole thing making fun of Pee-wee Herman through this whole show.
Nice.
As an actor, he did a great job with the character of Pee-wee Herman. There is nobody in the world that will be able to ever top that or recreate that character.
Heard any good jokes lately? I love it. That's good. And I remember that. I don't think I remember it happening live, but I've seen it. And that's great.
Just that one line summed it up right there on how the man went to jail and then went right back into the limelight. And that is one of the first things he says. Have you heard any good jokes lately? That right there just tells you that he just took it with a grain of salt and moved on with his life.
Oh, yeah.
And, was still an icon. Everybody knows who Pee-wee Herman is.
Yeah. He was definitely one of those, like, he had way more support than not support. So
Yes.
he comes back into the limelight, and Pee-wee Herman fans are like, okay, so he was masturbating in an adult movie theater. So what? Why are we making a big deal out of this? He's a person. He's a human being, like they didn't have internet back then. You had to go to a movie theater or buy a magazine.
He just happened to get caught doing it.
Yeah. So
they made a big deal out of it only because he was a movie star and he was in the limelight. So they just took it and ran with it.
I gotcha, man. So I probably have two things because, like I said, there's two different versions of Pee-wee. There's the pre-Pee-wee's Playhouse Pee-wee, which is more adult oriented, and then there's the Pee-wee's Playhouse, which is clearly aimed at children. Now, I want to talk about Pee-wee's Playhouse for a second, just because, that's something else that he's famous for. And I wonder if there was no Pee-wee's Playhouse, would he be as much of an icon? So I'm going to kind of go into this. I just watched an episode where Miss Yvonne and Mrs. Renee had the same dress, and they were both saying it's a one-of-a-kind dress made by Monsieur Robert. And just the whole silliness of, you can't wear that dress, I'm wearing the dress, because it's one of a kind. Whereas people would just be like, okay, so don't wear the dress on the same day, I guess. But
Right.
they had to go through this whole thing about you can't wear the dress. And then it it was resolved because there was apparently some kind of like one of the dresses was designed with like a design reversed from the other one, and that's why they're both one of a kind. So yeah, the resolutions were very simple in Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Silliness.
Yes. And as far as the Pee-wee's Big Adventure and the Pee-wee Herman show, I love the Pee-wee Herman show. I haven't discussed this enough, but I love the Pee-wee Herman show because it sets up all the characters for Pee-wee's Playhouse, but they're all so much more adult. And I love that Miss Yvonne has this crush on Captain Carl, and Pee-wee gives up his wish with Jambi so that Captain Carl would like Miss Yvonne, and the whole thing blows up in his face. And I love the innocence, even though that whole show is so sexually themed. I don't know. I think that
he hypnotized a girl to take off her. I mean, that right there just tells you that it wasn't kid. I think the show started off more for an adult entertainment type thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But then he had he had Clocky on the wall, and he had the pterodactyl. Had all these other characters that joined the show. And then you can't forget Cowboy Carl or Cowboy Curtis.
Cowboy Curtis, but who was actually not on the Pee-wee Herman show HBO special?
I don't think Cowboy Curtis was on the HBO special,
He was not.
and Mailman Mike wasn't on Pee-wee's Playhouse. It was somebody else.
Reba the Mail Lady.
You know, Mailman Mike actually has a cameo in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh yeah, which one is that?
He is the ticket salesman at the bus station.
Oh, is he the one who says you missed it by 5 minutes?
That's Mailman Mike.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's good. But yeah, it's just like what I love about the HBO special from 81 is that it's such like an innocent child story that is like everything that happens within this innocent child story is so inappropriate for children. And that's what I love it. You know, it's I don't know what word to use, but it's great. It's sort of like Avenue Q. You know, it's like Sesame Street for adults, you know?
Yeah.
And I suppose that can wrap up this Pee-wee Herman tribute. Paul Reubens, also known as Paul Rubenfeld, which is his real name.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. You know, thanks for the memories and all that stuff. It was great. And with that, I will say good night, Dan. Good night, Rob. And good night, everyone. Or if it's a different time of day, goodbye.